Founder and executive director of Moms Across America, Zen Honeycutt.
Zen Honeycutt heads Moms Across America, a group formed to raise awareness about toxic exposures. Her family switched to an organic-only diet after her 3 sons developed allergies and other health problems.
We've been drinking milk for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years, right? As a human race, why all of a sudden is your son allergic to milk?
I'm Zen Honeycutt. I'm the founding executive director of Moms Across America. We've been around for 12 years now. And I started Moms Across America because, like millions of mothers out there, I was struggling with my kids' health issues. They had allergies, autoimmune issues, asthma, and one eventually had autism symptoms. And I was completely confused. I had no idea why this was happening to my children. When I grew up, this just did not happen. I didn't know anybody that had these types of health issues that were allergic to 20 different foods. That just wasn't happening. So I looked into it, and somebody posted on Facebook Robin O'Brien's TED Talk called Patriotism on a Plate. It was all about GMOs and what was happening with the food supply. I felt completely betrayed that our government was allowing GMOs, genetically modified organisms, into our food without any labeling. I was mad for about 3 days, and then I decided to do something about it, and I researched. I watched the movie Genetic Roulette by Jeffrey M. Smith, and I realized that for sure GMOs were involved in my kids' allergies and health issues. Now, keep in mind, I didn't know about vaccines back then, so I was vaccinating my kids as well, so I do believe now that that was also a factor. But what I learned about GMOs is that they do and they can disrupt the gut microbiome. And that was the impetus for me researching, what was going on in the food supply. There's a saying goes that a worried mom does better research than the FBI. Well, I became one of those moms, and I took that on and researched what was going on in the food supply and connected it to the health of my children, and started Moms Across America. Our first event was we started by inviting people to join in to 4th of July parades. And I did that because Jeffrey Smith was saying for a very long time that if you share information with only 15% of the population, you can create a tipping point, right? You only need to reach 15% in order for things to snowball in the right direction. And Robin O'Brien's TED Talk was called Patriotism on a Plate, right? So I think subconsciously I put patriotism and reaching massive amounts of people together. And I said, let's join into 4th of July parades with banners that say Moms Across America March to label GMOs. And we did that. Our goal was 100, but we had over 179 groups join into 4th of July parades and reached thousands locally and millions nationally in a single day. And it was beautiful. I mean, people were cheering for activists. Normally, if you think about it, people roll up their windows when they see activists because they're yelling and they're angry. We were smiling, and we had balloons that said Google GMOs. People were applauding the moms, go moms. And we were handing out flyers that were what I call the golden ticket to a new pathway to health, right? I told the volunteers that when you're giving this flyer out, it is a whole new opportunity for them for health. Since then, we've passed out over 500,000 flyers in person, our moms have, and our 600 leaders have had over 1,000 events in all 50 states. So we believe that our moms are one of the driving forces of the marketplace, switching from 20 billion in sales of organic to over 70 billion in sales today, over tripling the organic marketplace. So I'm very proud of our moms that are active and care about our communities. The reason why organic is so important is because it does not allow for GMOs, genetically modified organisms, or toxic chemicals like glyphosate, atrazine, 2,4-D, paraquat, dicamba. These are all herbicides that are very harmful to human health. And GMOs are also harmful to human health and to animal health. And I'm going to tell you the 3 kinds of GMOs, okay? The first one was developed back in the 70s to combat the effect of glyphosate. So glyphosate was introduced into farming because Bayer and chemical companies were suddenly not allowed to use chemicals for warfare anymore, so they needed a new market. So they decided to declare war on bugs and weeds, and they convinced farmers that using chemicals to kill weeds and, of course, pests would be more labor efficient, right? More cost effective, which it was. It was easier, it was more convenient. However, they lied to them and said that these chemicals would be completely safe, you could drink them, they wouldn't do any harm to the soil, they would biodegrade in the soil. They straight up lied to the farmers. And what they did was they ended up using glyphosate, which was originally used as a pipe cleaner. It would chelate, meaning grab onto and make unavailable, which is in most cases the vital nutrients of any living thing it touches. In pipes, it was the metal on the inside of the pipes, right? It would clean out the pipes. So they saw that this glyphosate, however, didn't just clean out pipes, it would kill everything it touched. So they started using glyphosate as a weed killer. And then they discovered that it was killing the crops next to the weeds, right? So they decided to genetically engineer the crops to resist glyphosate, and they were effective in doing that. So there are now crops that are genetically engineered, such as corn, soy, sugar beets, canola, that you can spray with an airplane or a tractor with all kinds of glyphosate, and those crops will not die. The weeds will die, but the crops will not, right? So that's called Roundup Ready, or what we call HT, herbicide tolerant Roundup Ready crops. 80% of the genetically engineered crops in America are Roundup Ready, and they resist glyphosate herbicides. So that means that glyphosate is being used to the tune of 280 million pounds a year on the American food supply. But it's not just used on Roundup Ready crops, it's used also as a drying agent. So crops that are not GMO, like wheat, peas, beans, legumes, oats, they're often sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent just before harvest to speed up the harvesting process. So glyphosate is very widely used in the food supply because of GMOs and also non-GMOs as a drying agent. But organic, there's no glyphosate use, okay? The second type of GMO doesn't have anything to do with glyphosate, but it has the pesticide built right in. It's called Bt toxin, and it's a Bacteria thuringiensis toxin. This toxin, which is normally used in organic farming, and it does kill bugs, it is genetically engineered to constantly reproduce more toxin. So it's like a little toxin factory. And so when it's genetically engineered to be in, for instance, soy or corn, the corn or the rootworm will come along and eat any part of that plant, the root or the stalk, the leaves, and it will die because the toxin will get into its stomach, constantly reproduce more toxins, explode the stomach of the bug that eats it, and then the bug will die. Now, doesn't that sound an awful lot like gut dysbiosis, holes in the stomach of our children, and increased allergies, increased inflammation, increased sickness? That's what's happening in America because of these Bt toxin GMOs, which are mostly in corn. The third type of GMO I'm calling a DT GMO, which stands for desired trait, to follow suit with HT, and that's like gene editing, gene drive. They have nothing to do with pesticides or herbicides, but they do have a desired trait. For instance, salmon that will grow 4 times fatter, 4 times faster, and be sterile. Desired traits, right? Not so desirable to eat. In my opinion, I'm not interested in feeding my kids that. But the problem with these types of GMOs, for instance, the potatoes that are genetically engineered not to brown, they're still rotting. The brown is masked so that you don't see it rotting, right? You could smell it rotting, but you don't see it rotting. Same thing with apples, the non-browning apples, or rice that has more vitamin A in it. Those types of foods are genetically engineered to have a desired trait. The problem is that they have thousands of off-target mutations that are unpredictable and, in my opinion, undesirable, right? Nobody wants to have your food changing in unplanned and unintended ways and then feed that to your children. So those are the 3 types of GMOs. One has the pesticide built right in. One is genetically engineered to resist the herbicide. The problem with that is that the herbicides get on the crop and we consume those herbicides. The third one is genetically engineered to have a desired trait with thousands of off-target mutations. So in my opinion, none of these GMOs should be in the food supply. There are hundreds of studies showing harm, and our previous FDA has completely ignored them. Bioengineered is the new euphemism, it's the new word for genetically modified. They're not using the word genetically modified because activists like me, and probably you that's watching this, made too much of a fuss about genetically modified foods, so they don't want to use the word GMOs or genetically engineered or genetically modified on food products now. So most food companies simply say bioengineered. This is unfortunate because the word bio in Europe means organic. So they're actually co-opting the word bio and using it for genetic engineering, even though it's the furthest thing from organic. Anything that's produced in a lab and can be patented, and that they charge the farmers 375% more for those seeds, is not organic and it's not natural. If you look at any type of food package and it says may contain bioengineered ingredients or contains bioengineered ingredients, most likely those ingredients are the soy, the corn, or the sugar. 75% of food products on the market today, especially processed foods, contain GMOs, which are from soy, corn, sugar, or canola. That is because anywhere from 85% to 100% of those commodity crops in America are GMO now. There's been a massive shift over the past 30 years from conventional or heirloom or, organic type seeds to genetically modified. And that's because Monsanto basically co-opted the insurance system and the banking system, and farmers weren't allowed to get their crops insured unless they used genetically modified seeds. And that was because Monsanto convinced the insurance companies that their seeds would be safer and better resistant to pests or weather problems, which is not necessarily true, right? They say it would work that way, but in many cases it does not. Farmers were practically forced to get on this toxic treadmill of chemical cocktails. They have now been practically enslaved in a system of chemicals that they have to use over and over again. They use the chemicals that deplete the soil, and then they have to use fertilizers from the same companies to replenish the soil. Now the companies are even genetically modifying bacteria to put genetically engineered bacteria in the soil to rejuvenate the soil. It is absolutely crazy how these companies can actually profit off of the harm that they cause to the soil and to humans. If you look at Syngenta, they're the largest pesticide producer in the world. It's now a Chinese company. They've merged with ChemChina. They make at least 400 different pharmaceutical companies through their sister company, AstraZeneca. So their sister company benefits off of the harms that the pesticides cause by their sister company. And this is, to me, absolutely criminal, that it's a perfect profit circle for them, but it is a vicious cycle of sickness and soil depletion and human health being hurt over and over and over again. So these companies are primarily Monsanto, which was bought out by Bayer, which is a German company, and Syngenta was bought by ChemChina, so that is now a Chinese company. Syngenta is in Switzerland. Dow and DuPont have merged, and they are in the United States. So those are the primary ones. There's BASF as well. That's a European company. So these companies have U.S. production, of glyphosate, of things like that, but they are primarily foreign companies that are inflicting harm upon the American people. So I would recommend, as much as possible, if you can, buying 100% organic cotton t-shirts. Hemp or linen are also wonderful, but most people can't afford that. It can be very expensive to buy those types of clothes. The next best thing I would say is to buy consignment, because at least it's been washed many times. The chemicals aren't as new. They're not going to be off-gassing as much. And if you do buy new, I would just recommend that you wash it first as much as possible. It's the clothing thing is not something that I've been able to take on in a major way. We haven't found sources of 100% organic cotton clothing that is anywhere near affordable for what the most American people can do. So most new products will have chemicals on them that will be harmful. So I would always suggest that you wash the garments before your baby wears them. I bought a dress one time that was brand new, and I put it on and my whole body broke out in a rash. It was a red dress, and I think the dye in it just made me have a full-on body rash. So I made sure to wash our clothes before we wear them. At Moms Across America, we initiated the first glyphosate testing in America, and we tested for urine, tap water, and breast milk for glyphosate, and found glyphosate in 70 to 90% of the tap water and the urine. And we found glyphosate in breast milk 3,000 times higher than has been shown to cause sex hormone changes and liver and kidney damage in animals. And this was in a mother who ate conventional food. She wasn't aware of GMOs or glyphosate. She was a friend of Moms Across America. The other women, the other 9 women, there were 10 tested in total, knew of GMOs and glyphosate, and 2 others had detectable levels, but they were much lower than what the woman had that was eating conventional food. So across the board, from the testing that we have seen, it's much better to eat organic and to avoid GMOs than to just eat the regular conventional diet, especially if you're breastfeeding. Now, in addition to contaminating urine, tap water, breast milk, orange juice, beer, wine, tampons, gauze in the hospital, cotton, all kinds of foods, eggs, bagels, chips, snacks, candies, wheat, pizza, oats, practically everything, lentils, beer, all of these different types of things are contaminated with glyphosate. We also found glyphosate in vaccines, and we were horrified by this. But when I saw the ingredients of vaccines, when my son was 9 years old, and I read them for the first time in my life, and I said, wait a second, there's bovine serum, there's chicken embryos, there's gelatin, which I later learned comes from pigs. Their tendons ground up and made into gelatin. And when I saw those ingredients, I thought, wait a second, there's probably glyphosate in them, because I had already seen the study by Monica Kruger out of Germany that showed that glyphosate was in animal meat and tendons and bone marrow. The animals that ate the GMO grain sprayed with glyphosate had glyphosate in their muscles and tendons and bones. And so when I saw those ingredients with animal parts, we know it doesn't wash, dry, or cook off. It's in the animal parts. So I thought there's probably glyphosate in vaccines. So I sent 5 childhood vaccines off to be tested to a very brave lab owner. And the lab owner happened to have also worked at Monsanto in his past. And so he knew all about Monsanto. He knew the shenanigans that they were up to. And he was a part of creating the methodology which tested for glyphosate. So he knew how to test for glyphosate. He tested these 5 childhood vaccines, and they all came back positive, every single one of them. And this is statistically very important, because when we tested 20 Pediasure feeding tube liquid samples for glyphosate, only 6 came back positive. So we were thinking if they come back positive at all, maybe it'll be one of them. But no, it was every single one of them. Now, the levels for the MMR vaccine were 25 times higher than the other vaccines. And we believe this is because that vaccine is the only one that's a live virus vaccine. And that means it has to have 25% of the vaccine has to be gelatin to stabilize the live virus. And that gelatin, of course, comes from pigs fed GMO grains sprayed with glyphosate. I wanted to put this information out right away. I was floored. But I was told that Big Pharma makes Monsanto look like Mickey Mouse, and that I would be suicided if I put that information out without corroboration. So I waited a little bit until another scientist that I trusted got another batch of vaccines tested for glyphosate. He had 14 childhood vaccines tested, and 12 of them were positive. And his MMR vaccine was 34 times higher in glyphosate than the other vaccines. So completely confirmed our findings. And the reason why the MMR vaccine being higher in glyphosate is so important in comparison to the other ones is because Andy Wakefield lost his job. He lost his reputation saying that the MMR vaccine tore up the stomach lining of the children. It caused gut dysbiosis in children. He didn't say it caused autism. He just said that it caused gut dysbiosis in children. Why is that important? Well, because Donna Pharma, Monsanto's lead toxicologist, when she was questioned, about the safety of Roundup and glyphosate, and do you test the final formulation of Roundup? She said, oh no, we can't test the final formulation of Roundup on rats. Their stomach lining is very delicate, and it tears up their stomach lining, and they die. And we can't do animal studies on animals that die. So we only test for glyphosate on animals. The only way that glyphosate was shown to be harmful, and keep in mind, this is only on short-term toxicology studies, but she said the only way that glyphosate was shown to be harmful was when it was injected. And we all know it's not injected. No, we do know it's injected now. There's glyphosate in childhood vaccines. They have been ignoring this. The CDC has been ignoring this. The FDA has been ignoring this for 9 years. But finally, this administration is looking at the information and is going to determine if glyphosate is still in vaccines or not, and is still most likely tearing up our kids' stomach lining, contributing to autism, and causing chronic disease in America today. So a water source that would be wonderful to get would be spring water that's delivered to your house in glass containers, if you can afford that. Another way would be to get the AquaTrue water filter. It's available on Moms Across America as an affiliate. And we offer that. We happen to find out that it's also the only water filter that Erin Brockovich recommends. And this is because it is reverse osmosis. It gets everything out, glyphosate, PFAS, fluoride, all of that. But you do have to put trace minerals back in to reverse osmosis water. Otherwise, your body will pull calcium out of your bones in order to process the water. So you want to put trace minerals back into reverse osmosis water. And when you're taking a bath, there are carbon filters, which will help a lot with getting chemicals out of the water. And it's like a ball that you can put under the spout of the bath in order to prevent chemicals from getting in the bath water. The top 3 things I would recommend for any mom to do to improve the health of her family is, number 1, get soda and highly processed food out of your house. Just don't buy it. Don't bring the highly processed foods like Pop-Tarts and Hot Pockets and microwave foods. Just don't buy the highly processed foods as much as possible. Buy whole foods. The second thing is to buy organic as much as possible. If you can't buy all organic, at least buy your strawberries and your apples organic. Any wheat products that you eat organic, like spaghetti and cereals and crackers, any type of bread, try to buy those organic, because then you're going to be getting glyphosate out of your diet, right? And the third thing to do, maybe the fourth, I'll have to have 4. So the third thing to do would be have good source of water. Get your water filtered or get spring water delivered to your house. And the fourth thing to do is get out in nature. Get your kids away from the screens, get their feet in the dirt, because that immediately grounds your energy and reintroduces different microbes and bacteria that are beneficial from nature that will get your children healthy again. So eating out is very tricky. You can look up organic restaurants. You can do the best you can with finding organic restaurants. You can also look up Seed Oil Scout. It's restaurants that don't use seed oils, which is beneficial. But when you're sitting down to order food, I personally purchase the beef on the menu, because beef, from what I have seen, the test results have shown the lowest amount of glyphosate and other toxic chemicals. I never order chicken out, because I know too much about the arsenic being in chicken and how 80% of UTIs, urinary tract infections, are caused by bacteria in chicken. And unless it's organic and pasture raised, and it says that right on the menu, I never order chicken. Fish can also be problematic because of mercury in the fish, seafood. But if they don't have beef, I will order fish. I usually try to order steamed vegetables and steamed rice, or whole potatoes, whole sweet potatoes, those types of foods. I stay away from fried foods, and I usually do not eat the bread unless I know that the bread is, organic or ancient grain or sourdough. So it can be tricky to eat out, but if you choose wisely, you stay away from the fried foods, of course, anything with food dyes in it, then you fare better. The types of foods usually are Thai food, Mexican food, and any type of Asian food can usually be better.